All right, folks, we are about ready to get started. For those of you that are still kind of hanging out, networking, you can make your way to the seats. Again, following the program, we will have a networking portion where there will be plenty of appetizers and beverage. So I'm really excited to welcome you all this afternoon to Triad Business Journal's Made in the Triad event. My name is Mark Gendel. I'm the market president and publisher of Triad Business Journal. Historically, we have always had some form of a manufacturing panel / event discussion, special section that we've always done every year in our print piece. This year, when we were planning back in January earlier in January of this year, the thought was we need some continuity around our manufacturing kind of event, our touch points. So this is where was born the Made in the Triad concept. It's not an awards portion. It's a way for Triad Business Journal to put a spotlight, shine a spotlight on what we have throughout the region, what we have for manufacturing. In an area at one point that was rich in textile, tobacco, furniture, some of that still exists. We're going to hear a panel discussion shortly of modern manufacturing, what we are doing now, what we are doing on a larger scale from a large business all the way down to some businesses that I believe kind of started as a hobby potentially and kind of blossom. So I'm really excited for the panel here shortly. Obviously, programs like this are not made possible. So I want to acknowledge the sponsors that we have with us today. First, Gilliam Bell Moser, Guilford Technical Community College, Superior Mechanical, Workforce Unlimited, and our title sponsor today is Bank OZK. So at this point, I would like to introduce Joe Carroll, President of Commercial Banking for North Carolina, to tell us more about Bank OZK. While Joe makes his way to the stage, please enjoy the short video that we have. Joe?
Bank OZK has been a source of strength for more than 100 years. Reliable through economic storms, ready to serve, ready for anything, embracing the future with a vision of greater. Now, more than ever, we're ready to put our strength to work for you. Bank OZK, greater awaits.
So thank you all for watching that. Good afternoon. As Mark said, I'm Joe Carroll. I'm with Bank OZK, and I get the pleasure and the privilege to run our North Carolina commercial banking group. And I would like to thank you all for attending this panel discussion this evening. This is something that is probably near and dear to us, the manufacturers, because we like to do business with manufacturers and, you know, we like the things that they make and all that sort of stuff. So I think you're going to see a very informational panel discussion, and there'll be time for questions, and we hope you will ask questions and take something away from here. But as you all know, this environment that we're in right now is an extremely challenging environment. Economically, we've seen interest rates, you know, not go as high as what they were when I first got started in this business, but they are probably halfway there. And, you know, we don't want to see them go any higher because it's just not good for business. So hopefully our government and other folks are going to do some things to kind of control that. But even with all of that that's going on, you know, North Carolina is probably the perfect place to do business. So if you're doing business here, you're making something here, it's a great place to be doing that. We've got really great workers, and I know probably just like us, there's a challenge with many of you to find those workers. You know, we're challenged every day to find the best of the best, but we keep looking and we do find them, and I'm sure your businesses will as well. But, you know, on top of the workforce, we've got great infrastructure here. We just got a great climate for business and that sort of thing. So all the things that go on here in North Carolina are the same things that we've done at Bank OZK for over 100 years. You know, we try to do all the right things, not only within our company, doing all the sound business practices and trying to do the things that we've got to do to be compliant, but we also try to do what's right by our customers and our employees and our shareholders. So a lot of what we have done has led to 3 record quarters this year, and that didn't happen by accident. We have folks in all the different parts of our company that are just doing the right things to manage our business units, our business lines, and we're dealing with the right clients and doing the right things. So this year our loans have grown already almost $5 billion. Our deposits have grown a little over $5 billion. So, that's we're pleased with that, and we're pleased because we've had a lot of help from people here in North Carolina. Some of you do business with us here in North Carolina, and we appreciate that. And if you're not doing business with us, you need to look us up and come see us, because we certainly would love to do business with you. So, again, I appreciate you all being here. Just sit back and listen to an informative program, and we'll see you at the cocktail hour. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thank you to the entire Bank OZK team for not only being here tonight, but helping to support this important program. Our next supporting sponsor is Workforce Unlimited. I would like to welcome Mike Branick, CEO of Workforce, to the stage to tell us a little bit more about what you have going on in Workforce in your new office in Winston-Salem.
Yeah, no, appreciate that. Well, I can just sit down. Mark just did mine for me. So, made in the Triad. I know we all have a lot of pride being made in the USA, and I think a lot of pride here in the Triad. I grew up in Mount Airy, so I was made in the Triad. Workforce Unlimited is a staffing company here in the Triad. We're the most decorated staffing company in the Triad, and we've been fortunate to partner with some of the best manufacturing companies across the Triad, including Unify. We've supported Thomas Built buses indirectly through some of your suppliers. So we employ roughly 10,000 people a year annually. So when we're thinking about made in the Triad, the manufacturers get the credit for the product, but our employees are helping make those products. And we'd love the opportunity to partner with you and show you what it's like to work with the best. Thank you.
Thank you, Mike. Our next supporting sponsor is Gilliam Bell Moser. For over 75 years, Gilliam Bell Moser has proudly focused on manufacturing business, and it continues to advise and guide manufacturers in the Triad and beyond. Whether it's accounting, tax, audit, or advisory services, client needs always come first. The firm's foundation is access. Having an open door, a welcoming attitude, and an empathetic approach, its partners and employees remain committed to understanding their clients' needs through truly listening. Let's please give up a round of applause for Gilliam Bell Moser, tonight's supporting sponsor. Our next sponsor is Guilford Technical Community College. The Triad has a robust manufacturing heritage that has continually evolved, embracing diversification as well as innovation. At the heart of this transformation is Guilford Technical Community College, a dynamic institution that has adapted its curriculum and teaching methods to equip graduates with cutting-edge skills. This commitment ensures that all employers benefit from a well-equipped workforce who is capable of meeting today's demands while remaining poised for the challenges of tomorrow. GTCC is a proud sponsor for Made in the Triad panel and continues to support growth in the Triad areas throughout the manufacturing industry. Thank you to GTCC for your support this evening. And finally, I would like to thank Superior Mechanical. Superior Mechanical Incorporated is a premier commercial industrial heating and air company here in North Carolina. Our expertise and experience in the industry allows them to exceed client expectations time and time again. Superior can cover anything with your mechanical systems throughout any facility. Their expertise covers engineering, mechanical system design, equipment retrofit and replacements, building automation, energy efficiency programs, proactive and preventative maintenance, and on. When you want superior service with superior quality, please give Superior Mechanical a call. Thank you, Superior Mechanical. So as Joe mentioned, we will take questions at the end of the panel discussion. You'll see in the middle of your tables, there's some note cards and a pen. So as a question comes to mind during the discussion, feel free to jot it down. Towards the end of the discussion, we'll have some Triad Business Journal staff come around and collect those, and then we will ask those questions. So it is my privilege at this point in time to introduce our moderator, someone who needs really no introduction throughout the Triad. He's an original member of the Triad Business Journal with us for 25 years. Lloyd Winnington has been a professional journalism for the past 3 decades. He has served as editor-in-chief at Triad Business Journal for the past 5 years. So we are thrilled to welcome Lloyd to the stage to host and moderate this informative conversation. Lloyd.
Thank you, Mark. So I'm excited about this opportunity to lead a conversation about some pretty cool things made right here in the Triad. For me, having ridden Thomas-built buses to school as a child, it's been interesting to learn about how the company continues to evolve and the way that Unify is recycling plastic bottles into fibers for products ranging from apparel to automotive interiors. That's just mind-blowing to me. And who doesn't love the story of a firefighter who's making handbags from recycled fire hose, even if that's not something I want to share with my wife. And getting to go behind the scenes at a local fishing tackle factory, I was like a kid in a candy store. My wife feels about fishing tackle about the way I feel about purses, so I'm not sure she's excited about that relationship. But so while each of our panelists has interesting stories to share, today's conversation is important for another reason. It's no surprise to many in this room that manufacturing has a rich heritage here in the Triad, dating back to its history of textiles, furniture, and tobacco. And it's also not going to surprise anyone when I recall how the industry got a bloody nose, if you will, in the 1980s, 1990s, 2000s, as thousands of jobs went overseas or were eliminated through technological advances. Manufacturing, however, is far from dead in the Triad. I saw some numbers recently from the Bureau of Labor Statistics documenting that about 100,000 people in the Triad work in manufacturing right now, second only to healthcare, which is about 107,000. So it's really close to being the region's largest employer. And you need only look at the headlines of the past 2 years to see evidence of manufacturing's resurgence across the region with major jobs announcements from Toyota, Wolfspeed, Boom Supersonic, Honda Aircraft, Nucor, Siemens Mobility, among many others. Today, however, I want to pull back the curtain on another key aspect of the region's manufacturing base, and that is existing companies that have quietly adapted and evolved over many years, even a century in one case, through hard work, innovation, and an entrepreneurial mindset. They're also responsive, and not just to the economic forces within their sectors. I didn't plan this as I reached out to each panelist to serve on this panel, but as I talked with each of them in recent weeks, I recognized a common thread around sustainability in how they make what they make, and just a sensitivity to the environment and sustainable manufacturing. So that's a theme that we want to try to make sure that we have time to get to. And we also want to allow for questions. As Mark said, we've got some index cards. I hope you'll fill them out. We'll take them up and try to make sure we have some time at the end for questions. So let's jump in. We've got a lot of ground to cover. And I'm going to ask each of our panelists to come to their seat as I introduce them. Kevin is first. Kevin Bankston is a 22-year veteran of Thomas-Built Buses parent company, Daimler Trucks, including time in Portland and internationally. Bankston has served, he had served as CFO of Thomas-Built from 2005 to 2008 and returned to the company locally in June 2021 as president and CEO. Michael Eaton is a former retirement community executive who this spring, with college buddy and fellow sportsman Brandon Kirk, Brandon is also here with us today. They bought a nearly 50-year-old fishing lure manufacturing business in Burlington that operates as Cedar Rock Manufacturing and HR Tackle. Next is Eddie Engel, the CEO of Unify. He spent more than 30 years with the Greensboro-based textile company. He held roles such as Vice President of Supply Chain and Global Corporate Sustainability Officer between 1986 and 2018 before returning to the company in 2020 as CEO. And finally, we have Janelle Robinson, a volunteer firefighter and EMT in Summerfield, who, who owns and operates Burn Bags USA, making handbags and other accessories from recycled fire hose. So thank you, Michael, Kevin, Eddie, and Janelle for participating today. I'm going to start with Kevin and Eddie, as they each lead two of the Triad's largest employers with nearly 1,900 workers each, but also two of the oldest companies. Thomas Built dates back 107 years to building streetcars, while Unify is a textile maker that has evolved dramatically over its half-century history. So Kevin, I'm going to start with you. Can you give us just a brief summary of what Thomas Built makes in High Point and what's on the horizon as you migrate some of what you make in one facility over to another one?
Yeah, thanks, Lloyd, and great to be here tonight. Yeah, so Thomas Built is a big part of High Point, right? I mean, you mentioned some of the industry that's come and gone, but Thomas Built's been a steady player in High Point since it started in 1916, and it started as a streetcar manufacturer. And interestingly enough, some of those cars still run. I was in New Orleans about a year ago and rode the St. Charles line, and some Perlier Thomas streetcars are still in operation there. And we had the pleasure to visit the facility that keeps them up, and that was a lot of fun. But in the 30s, kind of through the Depression, the company migrated to building yellow school buses. The first buses ever ordered and built were for Guilford County. They were wooden school buses. And so, you know, we've evolved from there. As Lloyd mentioned, it's now part of Daimler Trucks. Daimler Trucks is the largest global commercial vehicle manufacturer. In the US, you'd know us as Freightliner heavy duty on highway trucks based in Portland. That's why I've lived there so many times. Daimler bought Thomas Built in 1998, so it's been in the Daimler family for quite some time. And what's really interesting about the company these days is, you know, school buses sounds like something we all know and many of us rode as children, but it's really kind of cutting edge in terms of electrification in the commercial vehicle industry, right? So normally, if you look within the Daimler world, we're a bit downstream from some of the other engine technologies and so on that we leverage the parent company for. But in this case, school buses are ramping up. There's very strong demand. There's a lot of funding around school buses. So the demand side is clear and strong, and the biggest challenge right now is kind of ramping up our relatively nascent e-vehicle supply chain. We are seeing kind of a doubling year on year of the e-school bus business. We'll do somewhere around 700, 750 this year. We expect that to double next year. And if you look at electric vehicles actually in operation for Daimler globally, and we're, as I said, the largest commercial vehicle manufacturer in the world, we're about a quarter of what's in operation globally, right? So it's really an interesting thing for Thomas Built and for this area to be kind of cutting edge in something that's helping lead the way and lead the change in our space, in our industry, and with our company. And with that, we're shifting, and I think, Lloyd, I'll just touch briefly on that. We have basically two production operations in High Point. There's a traditional place where actually streetcars were built. It's on Courtesy Road in High Point. And then cross town off of what's called Eden Terrace, off of Fairfield in High Point, for those of you who know it. We have our C2 plant. It's a state-of-the-art automotive type, automotive manufacturing plant. That's where the E's are produced. But it also produces a large number of our overall production, Lloyd. I'll pause there and see if I covered that, or if you want to.
Yeah, that's okay. Good. You know, electrification, I was sure you would get there pretty quickly. But you know, Thomas Built decided to embrace that maybe 5 years ago, and it's ramped up dramatically in that time. So speak a little bit to what are the drivers are of that, and why school buses are kind of the ideal
use case.
Use case.
Yeah. Yeah, and that's right. And I mean, that's one of the factors. I mean, certainly the interest of having kids on emission-free transportation brings a lot of interest in kind of the funding side, which is fantastic. But the use case is perfect for a school bus, right? I mean, if you think about charging a battery, right, a school bus typically is going to run, you know, for a couple of hours in the morning, come back for part of the day, and then run again in the afternoon. You have ample time to charge multiple times per day. So from that perspective, it's good. I mean, on a single charge, a bus will get 130 or 135 miles now. That probably covers 95% of bus use cases, right? So it's ideal from that perspective. The other thing that's really interesting as well is buses are a little less active in the summertime, and you know, in the world we're in today, there's opportunities on the energy side with vehicle to grid. It's called V2G. So a bus effectively can pull and store energy, and it can pull energy at like non-peak times and put energy back into a grid at peak times. And that's a pretty important economic driver for a district, right? To actually be able to monetize that when a bus isn't running. It helps actually defray the difference in cost of ownership in the business case to actually buy them. And, you know, we're actually seeing that in action. And I know from one of our customers, like in Massachusetts, for instance, we have a fair number of buses. A single bus could bring in over $10,000 in the course of a summer, right? So that's another aspect where school buses are really kind of ideally situated, Lloyd, for E. And that's, you know, one of the reasons we see such a growth curve.
So there was a little bit of news this week earlier. The Volvo Group,
Yep.
Triad, well known in the Triad, its intent to acquire the battery making business of Proterra, which
Yep.
makes batteries and electrification systems for your buses. What's interesting is Thomas Built's owned by Daimler, a
Yep.
rival of Volvo in the manufacture of heavy duty tractor trailers. So does a rival owning such a critical component of your electrification push create any heartburn?
I appreciate the question, and it'll take a minute to kind of play that one out, but I'm happy to do so. It doesn't, honestly, and I'll say why. We've also announced plans to, and we now is broader than Thomas Built, it's Daimler, right? We're in a world of increased partnerships between former competitors, especially on the front end. So Daimler's announced a massive investment of over $1 billion for us and $3 billion total to build a cell manufacturing plant together with Cummins, the engine manufacturer, and PACCAR, our traditional rivals, who are Kenworth and Peterbilt, right? And so that will come online in about 5 years' time. So with that, we know, and Proterra has always been aware, that our future ultimately is Daimler inside. But Proterra plays a very important role for us. I would say we're their largest customer. We have good demand. We expect to continue to be their largest customer, and at least for the interim time period of the midterm. We're really happy Proterra landed with such a quality partner because, quite frankly, they've been in reorganization, bankruptcy. So it's a very good outcome for them. We're very pleased for them. And I mentioned the one partnership, but on the other side, even in Europe, we partner with Volvo on a couple big ticket things. We're partners in an energy, well, in the hydrogen transportation setup. We're developing hydrogen trucks for long haul trucking together with Volvo and a company called Cellcentric. It's a 50-50 partnership. We also have a on-highway electrification program with them, partnering to bring electric, infrastructure into the highways of Europe. So the climate's changed a lot. We certainly compete very heavily in day-to-day business, but the investments required in EV and hydrogen are massive, right? And they require partnerships like we've never seen before. So we feel good about where Proterra landed, to kind of sum it up, and we intend to continue to be their largest customer for the midterm.
Okay. Good, thank you. So it's probably a good time to pivot to Eddie. Unify has a fascinating story of reinvention within textiles. So first tell us in layman's term how Unify makes Reprieve.
Great question. And I've got the raw material right here. So for those of you who don't recycle, please recycle. We need these bottles. We actually recycled over 35 billion bottles to date globally. So, and we've got a goal to hit 50 billion by 2025. So basically what we started out actually trying to figure out what to do with our own waste. When we make polyester, we have yarn waste. And we started that back in about 2003, and we figured it out by 2007. And the promise was that we could actually produce a product that was as good as virgin yarns. As it would dye the same, it would perform the same on a knitting machine or a weaving machine. there was no compromise necessary, and that you could, from batch to batch, have the same product. And so we were able to do that with our waste, and then we added the component of bottles, the post-consumer. And we've got a bottle washing facility here in Reidsville, North Carolina, where we recycle over 100 million pounds of bottles that we get from up and down the East Coast. And in some cases, we combine it with our yarn waste. And what's really exciting about it is our first partner was a company called Polar Tech. They made the fleece, and Patagonia was their customer. They had the jackets. And the beautiful thing was, you know, when you think about sustainability from a garment point of view, you think about Patagonia. But to persuade Polar Tech that they could drop this yarn in and not have to compromise anything was a really, really exciting thing for them. And it made a very natural evolution. And once companies saw companies like Patagonia market our Reprieve brand on a hang tag, it made them want to also use Reprieve. And so in our operation in Yakinville, we have a Reprieve recycling center where we take the bottle flake, the chopped up bottles, and we turn that into resin, and that resin is used to spin yarn. Like we think of a shower head coming out at 3,000 meters a minute, very hot and cooling down very quickly. We do that with these bottles and turn it into really soft fiber in our texturing operation that's beside the recycling center. And the evolution over time, again, we trademarked Reprieve in 2003. We figured out how to make it in 2007 and commercialize it. And over the last 16, 17 years, it's become about 35 to 40% of our fiber sales globally. In fact, our operation in Asia is practically, the majority of that is Reprieve. And our job really at the end of the day is to help brands and retailers meet their sustainability targets. And we do that through bottles.
So the idea, did it originate out of the R&D within Unify, or was it a textile student at some textile school who suggested it?
Well, the textile business is plagiarizes frequently. I think the difference, people were using bottles for a long time. The first bottle was put on the market in 1978. So people were using it in staple fiber, which is short staple fiber, short fibers. We were the first people to be able to take these bottles and on a continuous basis make filament yarn, which is it's continuous. And we did that through trial and error, really, and working with machinery manufacturers, because what our requirements were very different from people in the staple fiber industry. So through our know-how, machinery manufacturing know-how, and some other secret sauce that we don't like to talk about, we've been able to make a product that nobody else back then has been able to do it. And what's really unique about our product, as we went through this process, customers asked us, well, how can you prove it's recycled? How do you know that it is recycled? And one of our smart engineers said, let's put a tracer in there. So we have this chemical tracer inside every single pound of resin that we make that stays with the yarn, that stays with the fabric, that stays with the handbag, the backpack, the t-shirt. And that FiberPin technology is backed up by our U-Trust verification system. So a lot of times we'll have Patagonia or somebody send us a product and say, does this have Reprieve in it? Is this really Reprieve? And we can test that and prove. So that U-Trust verification system is the security system, the trust and transparency that the brands need. That was an internal development, and it's one of the things that has catapulted us into being the premier sustainable fiber of choice for the major brands out there in the textile industry and other industries.
So a huge amount of investment to pull that off. How long did it take to get to a marketable product, and give us a ballpark idea of what kind of investment it took to get to that point before you could generate revenue?
Well, like I said, our first program was in 2007, was with Patagonia and Polar Tech. And I will tell you, it's like anything you do. Somehow it just seems like it does nothing for the longest time. And then suddenly there's a little uptick, and then boom. And the space between going from, say, 5% of our business to 10% took probably 3 or 4 years, but to go from 10 to 40% of our business took about 5 years. We hit, we had the right product at the right time that was trusted and transparent. And, the consumers are making these decisions. And the brands are hearing from consumers that the consumers want to have choices. They want to make the sustainable choice. So we had the right product at the right time. And I would say in the last 5 years, other than COVID did give us a bit of a dip, but we've been going from strength to strength in the last 5 years, 6 years.
A lot of that driven by customer acceptance as opposed to costs coming down or some other factor.
No, Reprieve is more expensive than virgin material, but it is real and it's trusted, and we can ship this product and we make this product globally. So that's the other thing we can do is at Unify. We can develop a product here. All of our technology is actually developed here in the US, and we have partners that help us make it in Asia. We have operations in Central America, in Brazil, in Colombia, our own operations. So we can produce this and supply this anywhere in the world, and that's the real trick to it. And it's US. We're a US-based company. We're publicly traded, so the brands know they can trust us.
So do you answered one of my questions, and that is whether it is less expensive, more expensive to use the recycled fiber. Do you see a point in time where it becomes less expensive?
I mean, our goal is to make it parity to virgin. Yeah. Part of the expense, though, is the marketing of it. Part because you have to tell your story. Part of it is the yield losses. There's a lot of variation. I mean, Deming said variation is the enemy. Well, in recycling, you're going to get a lot of variation. So we're able to deal with that, but it does cost a bit of money. I think long term, it will come down in cost. I mean, the collection rate of bottles in the US is only about 28%. In Europe, it's about 56, 57%. In Asia, it's about 90%. So if everybody recycled their bottles, and in fairness, we don't have the infrastructure here to do a lot of recycling like some of the other countries around the world, but the more bottles are recycled, the cheaper these will be, the more we'll be able to be cost parity with virgin.
Okay. So diversifying beyond apparel, which has seen, according to your recent quarterly report, has seen declining demand. It was noted, a goal is to diversify to other products. What does that look like, and why is it so critical?
Well, when we developed Reprieve, it mainly went into performance apparel, and as I said, the consumers are more aware now. Social media is helping that happen, and what we found was that industries like in the mattress industry, which is very big in North Carolina and in the US, automotive, as the electrification of cars happens, I'm going to be selling you some yarn later on for your seats and your headliners. But these other industries are now getting demands from their consumers, and we're able to fulfill a part of the sustainability story that they haven't been able to up until this point. I had a meeting yesterday with a big seat fabric manufacturing company in South Carolina, and their customer specifically asked for the new program for a 2025 truck or car to be made of recycled material. And it's those beyond apparel industries where we are able to help those companies become more sustainable. That's what's really exciting for us, because t-shirts are ubiquitous. Polyester t-shirts. I mean, we don't work out in cotton t-shirts anymore, but if we can expand the reach of Reprieve into other industries, it gives us a defensibility that we haven't had up until now.
So I'm going to come to Janelle. I'm coming to you, Michael, soon. So Janelle, tell us your story. How did you come up with the idea for burn bags?
So I originally was a middle school teacher. I had kids, stayed home, and when I turned 40, I had the bright idea to become a firefighter. And within the first few months that I became a firefighter, we got a lot of new fire hose at our station, and all fire hose has to get service tested once a year. So any hose that fails testing or that we aren't going to use anymore usually ends up in the dump. So we had a whole crate of it at the station, and I asked my chief if I could take some home and try to make something out of it. This is very normal.
Right, sure. So you decided to make it, and now you're making a variety of products that retail for what? And then tell us kind of what the trajectory in terms of the volume that you've done has changed.
So the bags range from $44 to $199, and In the beginning, I had to get, I've always sewn, but I had to get an industrial sewing machine. So that was the first year we invested our family's, my husband let me use our family's tax returns to buy an industrial machine. And so now I have one, a nice big one, but so I had to go through some research and development time. So I made a couple different designs, and seams would come out or wouldn't hold as well. So I had to keep switching the design of the bags and learning about sewing with fire hose. So it's a different fabric than normal fabric. So there was a learning curve of learning how to sew with fire hose. It's kind of like the fibers are really, it's kind of like burlap. You know how burlap, it just comes apart. You can just keep pulling the strings and it comes apart. It will just keep coming apart. So I had to learn to put a stabilizer on the back with a heat press and learn about the different, there's rubber fire hose, there's cloth fire hose, the different types and the best use of them and what products. And so in the beginning, my market was mostly fire wives. That's how it started. They liked that their husbands had used the hose to fight fires, and it protected their husbands in real life, like every day, and protected people's property. And so the wives really clung to it at first. And once the story got out, it just kept growing. And so the first year, I probably sold 400, and I personally made the first 500 at home in my house. And then after about 500, I realized I needed help making the bags. And we have a local recovery program in Summerfield. It's called Tabitha Ministry. And the women, it's a 12-month program that they live in the house. And then after that, there's an 18-month program where they're in a discipleship house and they can get a job and start getting back on their feet. So those were the first women that I reached out to, and it's a mile from my house. So I pick them up in the morning and bring them to my house and teach them how to sew and how to run the business. They help me with every part of it. Every strap it's water buffalo. I get it by the hide. We cut it into straps. We punch holes in them. They set the copper rivets. They punch cut out the leather washers. They cut the fire hose. And then they were stitching for me. I would teach them how to stitch, and it's been pretty cool that some of them have gone on to work like at mattress factories, sewing and so forth. But it's been challenging. It's challenging. Sometimes it's sad, but I still have some of the women working for me, and a lot of it also is now technology. I've been able to help them get their high school diplomas and go to GTCC, one of our sponsors. They've helped with the bookkeeping classes I've helped them take and bought their books, and they can go on. And part of it for me is once they leave that 18-month program, that they have something, a skill that they can continue on with. So whether it's sewing or bookkeeping or different things like that. So they still help me. And I would say, so I've been doing this for about 5.5 years. Each year, the sales have doubled.
Your sales have doubled. So that's pretty impressive for something started out with just a, hey, what can I do for this?
What can I do with this?
What can I do with this?
To keep it from going to the dump.
Right. So you auditioned back, I think in August for Shark Tank. Didn't pan out. You didn't get called back.
I did.
But,
I did not get called back.
but you were telling me recently you discovered the next big thing, which is corporate business. How did that come about?
Yeah, so I just got, this summer I had my biggest order yet, which was 250 bags from one person, and that was for a corporate event. And they are having, it's a restaurant company, and they're having a conference. And so they wanted to have something made for each person. And I think a lot of us probably get those magazines in the mail, imprint or something where, you know, everyone's looking for something to put your logo on to hand out to people. And so they are going to be giving out the clutches with their logo on it. And then this week I just finished up the details of an order for 500 bags for a company, and it's a machinist, an aeronautical company, and they also are having a conference, and they're ordering 500 bags and putting their logo on it as well. So it's a good idea for something if you're looking for something different to give out as gifts for corporations.
Cool. So we're going to come to Michael. So thank you for your patience. So your story's a little different, as you didn't start a manufacturing business, but rather acquired one with your friend. How did two college buddies get hooked on buying a fishing tackle company?
I have no idea. First, thank you, Lloyd. Thank you, Triad Business Journal, Bank OZK, and the rest of our sponsors. Thank you. My business partner, Brandon, who's here, we hope to contribute a small percentage of what we're going to learn from you all today. So thank you. My business partner and I, we met in college and dear friends ever since, and everything we did was outdoors. Brandon taught me how to ski, how to fish, how to hunt, all of the above. And over time, through our careers, and Brandon has a computer information technology background, and I had a marketing and sales background working in senior living. Through our relationships through Burlington, Brandon is our captain, our fishing expert, our guide. He got hooked up with this company before purchase for several years, working website detail information, discussing with the owner potential, sale, working together, and of course, on a guy's weekend trip, we were discussing this opportunity and got together. I was recently retired from my previous career, and this company is located in my hometown. And of course, with the love of the outdoors, having a place on the lake, and always wanting to be a better fisherman, we all think we know that we know what we're doing, but you can always learn more. And that's where Brandon comes in. It was just a great opportunity for two college buddies to get together and really work on something that you're really passionate about. At the end of the day, I think that's what makes business successful, right? You have to have the passion, you have to be into it, and you have to own your business. Not just own it, but own your business, right? And that's how we got together, and we've been doing this just since April.
Mm-hmm.
And since April, just through Brandon's background with his career and my background, we're 60% growth
Already.
this year alone for a company that's been around since 1976. So we're excited about it. And, we apply, one of the biggest questions I get is, how does a guy with a retirement community, senior living background, get into this industry or have any kind of success? And same with Brandon, it's all lifestyle. At the end of the day, the outdoor sporting goods, fishing specifically, is a lifestyle. It's a lifestyle that people live, breathe, eat, and of course fish. And that's what it's about for us.
So, if I walk into Walmart or Dick's Sporting Goods or Sportsman's Warehouse or any local tackle shop, there's aisle after aisle after aisle of lures, especially plastics. So how can a manufacturing company like yours, small, handful of employees, compete in such a crowded space? What's your spiel? What's your unique proposition?
Yeah, sure. So firstly, obviously we're grateful for our distributor partnerships, first and foremost, which help us get in those stores. But mostly what Brandon and I believe in, it's kind of a mantra, a motto is, and you referenced it with your tracer. People want to know and they want choice. How do I know? And ours is, don't just tell me, show me. When you look at all those walls of all that fishing tackle and all of that choice, how do I make that choice? We are out there demonstrating what we do, whether it be through social media, whether it be at the trade shows, whether it be knocking on the doors of every mom and pop fishing tackle shop, describing our very first show that we went to, even before we actually owned the company. Brandon bought a 10-gallon fish tank, filled it with water, and said, here's theirs, here's ours. Which one do you want? Which one do you like better? Demonstrating the quality of our product, how it moves through the water better, how it floats better, all the different characteristics of our product. Doing that and spreading the word, mostly through social media right now is what we're seeing. And of course, with our distributors, what we found, distributors are buying more from us. There's been years of relationships there, but having the opportunity to really explain these differences and show the differences helps them sell for us. So teaching them to sell for us is key.
So I'd mentioned earlier kind of a common thread as far as sustainability, and it's obvious with Thomas Built with the electrification push. It's obvious with Unify with recycled bottles into fibers, burn bags, recycling, fire hose. But I also saw it at your operation. So how does sustainability, recycling of product work within your operation?
Yeah, it's a natural choice for us, which is great. It's great for the product. It's great for the environment. It's great for our industry, and essentially, I would assume or hope that most all of us growing up, we used to put together a model, whether it be a model car or dollhouse, whatever the case might be. When you break off your little piece of the model and you're left with the rest of the plastic, we call it the tree. It's very similar to how we make our products in our injection molding machines. So our products, obviously, we pick off the good and sell those, but that plastic product is reground and reused. It melts just as good as the original, and it's reused and goes right back in. So we have rows and rows of ground plastic, which is the leftover or the scrap that we reuse as well. So it's pretty natural for us. It's really easy to do.
Right. But lead, you also recycle lead?
So some of our
weights?
products are made of lead. Our purchase of lead is all recycled lead as well. We buy from metal recycling places. We put it all into our shop. We melt it down, pour it into our molds, and then same thing. Any leftover, any waste, any scrap from the edges, we cut off, we trim, we save, and we reuse as well. So those are essentially, aside from the hook, those are essentially 100% recycled.
So one reality in manufacturing is doing what's environmentally conscious is not always the cheapest route to go. Kevin, how much more expensive is an electric bus than a diesel?
At the moment, it's about 3 times as expensive.
3 times as
Yeah.
much.
Yeah.
Not inexpensive. A lot of money goes into the research and so forth. But
Yeah.
You also mentioned me. There's a lot of money at the federal level, and
Yeah.
that's part of what's also building the case for what you're doing.
Yeah, there's a tremendous amount of money. And so the biggest piece is the federal government passed about a year and a half ago. It's called the Clean School Bus Program. It's $5 billion allocated towards clean school buses. Originally, it was $2.5 billion for e-buses and $2.5 billion for alternative fuels, so non-diesel, but even things like compressed natural gas and so on. So, but the reality is that that side of the program is also open to e-funding, and 95+% of the funding's going towards pure E. So that's been a big help. But that's not only that, there's state programs as well. Different states have different recovery programs where they've assessed fines on people. They're redeploying it into electrifying the school bus fleet. So that really helps, you know, from the demand side to equalize. And what's going on with the federal funding is if you're a disadvantaged district, the whole tab can get picked up under the Clean School Bus Program. If you're not a disadvantaged district, then effectively the government will pay the gap between a diesel bus and an e-bus as long as you take one of the diesels out of service, right? So it's about replacing diesel over time with electric. That's been a big help in terms of, you know, us being able to, you know, build the scales that we need to see some of that cost come down over time to get more to parity. But that's also where like that V2G program I talked about comes in too, right? When you can make money in non-traditional ways on school buses, it helps drive, you know, beyond the pure purchase price point differential though.
So if sustainability is one commonality here, another is staffing and hiring and finding talent. Each business obviously has different needs. Michael, I think you shared with me kind of needing to fill a position or two, kind of determining the right timing. Janelle, you've gotten very creative in trying to find talent and help women kind of have difficult circumstances. Kevin and Eddie, you're both major employers here with about 1,900 apiece in the triad. So there's probably more question for Kevin and Eddie, just the scale. So when, you know, with the arrival of some of the new manufacturers coming in, Toyota, you know, Boom, so forth, what does that mean for you and your businesses, and how do you compete for talent? Eddie?
Yeah, it's I mean, everybody knows that the last few years has been quite difficult. However, I think what's exciting about our business, when we do have a lot of automation, and we've been putting the automation in over many, many years, we've just spent a lot of money in Yankton, North Carolina, investing in the state-of-the-art, what we call texturing equipment. It's faster. It uses 20-30% less energy per pound made. It is 20% less packaging. But the big thing is the operators like to operate this machine. It's easier for them to operate. So we've invested not just in better equipment that makes a better product, a cheaper product, but also the workers like it. And also we've spent a lot of money on additional automation to take some of the more difficult, mundane jobs out of the system. So, and the other thing is, you know, when you're hiring people and you tell them, hey, what you do is sustainable, and you can say, hey, this is a Hager Smartwash Reprieve suit, and you can get a Nike T-shirt made of Reprieve, and you can get Converse Nike shoes made of Reprieve. It does make young people want to come join the company, and that's been a real attraction, especially for the college graduates. But even on the wage employees, the operators and loaders and greeters, they do want to be part of something meaningful. I mean, everybody wants to have a purpose, and it has been a great thing to have, to be able to say, you know, we hate wasting. You know, we hate wasting waste. We hate wasting time. We hate wasting money, and you can be part of that. And people, it resonates with young people especially.
Kevin?
Yeah, well, first of all, it's really exciting what's going on in the Triad area with the rapid expansion and the win after win of new high quality employment opportunities. Lloyd, as you know, we've done a ramp up pretty recently, pretty substantial, right? We've added 300 plus folks over the last 12 months to add an additional shift at our main production facility. We didn't have tremendous difficulty finding people ready and willing to come to work, but we had pretty high turnover with the folks who did come. So that's been a challenge. It's pretty stable. I mean, we have a lot of long-term employees at Thomas Built. So if you look at kind of the core workforce of 1,500, let's call it, that piece has been stable for a long time. We're blessed with that. The new folks, I would say, it's kind of for every 2 we had kind of interested, we hired 1, but then after a short period of time, you know, they take that part that we hired, about a 50% fallout rate, because building buses isn't for everyone. And when they get actually in the facilities and see what's involved, that turns pretty quickly. So we've had a fair amount of churn, let's say, along the way. We have achieved what we're looking for. It's now settled down, I'm happy to say. So from the standpoint of assembly technicians, we're in good shape. We're also fairly automated, right? As Eddie said, I mean, we're really a world-class kind of automotive assembly operation in the plant I'm talking about, the main plant, the C2 plant. But the bigger issue for us is rather when we get into the more technical areas, so we call them skilled trades. And there's a critical shortage of those type of folks, not just in the Triad, but in many parts of the US. So what we're looking to do is find creative ways to fill those spots. And what I'm talking about, there are things like robot technicians, right? The guys who maintain the paint robots or other types of automation, or maintenance type workers, or even welders in parts of our business. So I think as we think about, you know, what needs to be thought through and addressed as we get to such manufacturing scale, for me, it starts there because we're even struggling with that today, right? And I did have the chance to meet Jeff of GTCC, here we go, who's doing some great things in that regard, right? And I think that's a big part of the answer is the partnerships between places like GTTC and manufacturers, because the demand is, we're still 25 positions short in that regard. And the demand will only exponentially multiply as we see these new projects come to reality. So that for me is kind of the critical element, Lloyd, as we think about our people and kind of what the needs are in human capital and so on, and where the investments need to be made. Yeah.
Probably like us, you treat your employees very well,
yep,
and they have good conditions and they have good benefits. So if you get them to stay for 6 months, that's the trick. So
it is. I mean, we constantly are celebrating 30, 40, and even some 50-year employees, right? Who their whole life is Thomas Built. And there is still, although it's part of this, you know, supersized global corporate giant, I mean, one of the nice things about Thomas Built, having worked many places in my company, is the Thomas family spirit still has some, it's still preserved to a large degree. And we're talking about, you know, 25 years ago, Daimler bought this. but it's still part of the core DNA there, and it's nice. I mean, people really resonate first and foremost with Thomas Built in the Triad and so on. So there's a tremendous amount of loyalty there, which we work hard to make sure it gets valued and recognized. And
So our time's getting short, and I want to close this out ahead of the questions by gleaning some wisdom from each of you, from your collective experiences. And Michael, you're first. You were talking with me about one of the things you learned about the imperative of communication and transparency with your business partners. What did you mean by that?
Well, I wish I could give you maybe even a more detailed answer, but I think it is really that simple. It's without a doubt, all of us, we have to have crystal clear communication, and I think it's honesty up front. I think at first it's easy for us if there's one little error, one little mishap, and we let it slide, but then the next one happens, and then before you know it, there's a blow up. Oh, it's always wrong. And so that's what experience has taught me. So with Brandon and I going into this, we wanted to make sure with any of our distributors, with any of our vendors who we partner with, and any of our customers that we work with, if there's any issue, we address it first and foremost. Even with customers, hey, I'm sorry you placed that order, we don't have it. I'm happy to do this for you. And that sounds like common sense, but it's actually, it's very easy to fall into some of these errors. Well, we'll just let it slide. We'll just take that shortcut. Avoid any shortcut. That's first and foremost, right? But secondly, especially with our distributor partners on both sides. And I think what they have found from us is they really respected it from us if we say, hey, we made this mistake, we own it, we will do this. But also, we were not afraid to say, hey, we think you made this error. And a lot of times what we find is, oh, wait, they buy from us. You know, they give us the check. Don't tell them it's their fault. I think it's all in how you handle it. But that has to be done up front. That has to be done at the beginning so that you have that two-way relationship right away. I learned that a long time ago. But I think that's key. And then before you know it, that relationship is just as symbiotic as it can be. And I think we found a lot of success with that. I hope that answered your question.
Yeah, that's very good. Janelle, you learned some lessons about design early on. It was there was a learning curve. There were handbags you made and learned what seems worked, what worked. How did you take what could have been perceived as a negative and grow from it?
Could have been perceived. Why? I didn't have a choice if I wanted to keep making good bags.
Right.
I wanted them to be good. I wanted them to work. I reached out to other professionals in the stitching business, and I wanted to make a really good quality product. So I just had to roll with it and learn until I was happy, until I wasn't getting any complaints back from customers about the quality of the bags.
So you learned, oh, that's why I need to do this. I need to do this technique instead of that.
Yeah, if it didn't work, then I figured out how to fix it.
And
Yeah.
you've had a loyal customer base since?
Yes, most of my customers are repeat customers. I mean, it's high repeat customers.
So, Eddie, what were some of the tough decisions Unify had to make along the way that that you and other manufacturers might learn from?
Yeah, like you heard, I started with Unify in 1986, and it's hard to imagine this, but in the 90s, the U.S. textile industry was just growing like crazy until China entered the WTO. So some of the hardest things early on, mid my career, was downsizing. But there's an advantage to going through something painful. It tells you something really important, and that's about innovation. And I'm a mechanical engineer by qualification, so I think about solving problems all the time. Whether it's, I don't have a ring on me, but I'm married. But what's the problem? I need to solve it. But solving problems, and if you put the customer first, and what their needs are, and put the future of your company 5 years, 10 years out, what are those needs? It all stems with innovation. And innovation is exciting for young people. It's exciting because it requires usual capital investment. But growth is life, and innovation creates growth. And and you can't stop innovating. And I think that's the one thing that's kept Unify going. Reprieve, it's not just the brand of Reprieve, but all the know-how that goes into that, and the complexity and the investment. And you know, our plant in North Carolina is 1.5 million square feet in just one plant in Yakima. And it's been going there for a long, long time. Our founder, Adam Mebane, he was driving innovation in many different areas, and that's part of our DNA, and that's why we're here, and we're going to continue to do that. I mean, I spent 2 hours with our technologists, our head technologists today, just talking about innovation 5 years out. I mean, that is what's going to keep us alive. So,
Kevin, any words of wisdom, lessons learned?
I mean, if we're talking, I refer back to Michael's comment around kind of being truthful and honest and consistent with partners. I mean, we went through a tremendously difficult year last year because two things kind of came together and were extremely difficult. One is the spike in raw materials. There's 6 tons of steel in a school bus, 6 tons of steel, right? And steel went through the roof. And many other things did as well. Every school bus we build has a plywood floor. Plywood went through the roof during some of the days as well. And at the same time, you may know, I mean, last year, the supply chain challenges in automotive were really quite something, right? Particularly with the chips required as the brains of the vehicles. So we had a good, strong order board. We had exponential cost increases with municipalities. I mean, you know, it's not like the commercial vehicle business where people are paying for mileage, right? And you can pass through costs to your customers. School districts are buying on fixed budgets. And so, long story short, I mean, we had to honor commitments that were extremely difficult to swallow, right? Until we get the pricing in and build those units. But that's what it takes to be a steady player in an industry, right? And I think that, and we have dealers as well and distributors. So I think, Michael, back to where you were, I 100% agree. It's about being open, transparent, having difficult discussions, but it's also standing behind commitments, right? And so I would say that. I've also done a fair amount of downsizing. Our industry tends to be pretty cyclical. Fortunately, it's a lot more fun to do upscaling, but I agree with the points on that as well. I mean, and always looking for kind of the next innovation, next S-curve, and so on is a big help in that regard. So I would just kind of echo a couple of the comments made, but give some examples, particularly on the one that Michael used.
Yeah, very good. So with that, our time for the panel is gone, but again, we've got time for questions. I'd like to open it up for questions if you have some. My colleagues are out gathering questions. Oh, I get to ask them. Okay. No, fine. If you've ever seen my handwriting, you know. For Kevin or Eddie, maybe both, how have you managed volatility post-COVID? How has it impacted your approach to planning, projecting, and forecasting future business needs?
First, well, COVID effectively shut us down for a period of time, right? And what we've seen since then, and it's actually kind of the opposite thing that's happened. Business has boomeranged since then because schools largely stopped, right, for a period of time. So in 2020 particularly, but coming out of that, you know, there's been a surge in demand and people want to continue updating their fleets and so on. So the COVID lessons have really largely been unfolding in the, I'd say, year and a half or so since, and they're having to do with managed supply chains more directly, because the chips were one thing, but you know, the massive demand followed not just in school bus, not just in commercial vehicles, but also automotive, right? And a lot of the supply chains are intertwined. So we've had to get much closer to our suppliers in order to manage that we have the right parts at the right time. And in some ways, it has been a bit of a reversal of some of the, you know, best cost country sourcing and kind of one location, cheapest price type sourcing, right? And moving back a little bit towards multiple sourcing opportunities, right? Which might not always be the cheapest method, but gives a relief valve if somebody gets stuck in a particular situation. So a lot of what we've been focused on, I think, has to do with that side of the equation since then. Would be what I would highlight at the moment, Lloyd.
Okay. Eddie?
Yeah, during COVID, our business bounced back pretty quickly, and it actually went way up because everybody was at home buying athleisure stuff. And the other thing that happened was all these brands and retailers kept on buying and buying from products all over the world because of logistics issues. They didn't want to have holes on the shelves. So the demand went way up for all of our businesses across the globe. And then about 15 months ago, the demand went down. And it's not just us, the whole global supply chain, everybody said, oh, I've got too much inventory. And so being very quick to adapt our inventories down, and what was really important to us to preserve cash. And it's hard to imagine how complex the textile supply chain is. But if you want to put something on the shelves in October, you're thinking about making that in January, and you're designing it the previous October. So we are having to deal with those complex supply chain issues that everybody's had to deal with in the textile industry. But I think it's about being quick and fast and recognizing you need to pull back inventories, and that's what we've been able to do.
So I think this one may relate to workforce. How is housing affecting your ability to maintain and grow your company? Anybody want to speak to that one?
I mean, we have locations here in the U.S. in Rockingham County where there is a lot of housing, but our biggest operation, Yadkin County, is short on housing, primarily because historically, you know, it's been a dry county for years up until very recently. So that didn't attract a lot of people, but also it's a farming community and they want to keep their land for farming. But at least with the new roads, people are able to commute in from North Wilkesboro or Winston. But housing is a problem, I think, and especially now where it's so expensive to build.
I think this is, let's see, probably Kevin. How important do you believe it is that we quickly mass produce chips domestically?
Yeah, it's I think super important, right? And the thing is, quickly is well underway, but it doesn't happen that quickly, right? Building these chip manufacturing plants, which are, you know, actual clean operations and so on. I think it's kind of a 2-year lead time, and we're well into that process in many cases. So we did see the industry respond to that. The investments have been massive, and the production starting to come out of those facilities. But yeah, I think a lesson learned the hard way a couple of years ago, and crippled production across the automotive industry in total, right? Absolutely crippled it. And I was a guest at a kind of a dinner of the Business Journal with Mark about a year ago, and that was the topic du jour at that point in time, right? That's what we spent most of the night on. So that's improved, and it will continue to improve, but we were definitely caught flat-footed there.
And this is one probably good to close out on, is a question for each panelist. What do you see as your biggest challenge to overcome in the near future, meaning 3 to 5 years? Janelle?
For me, I would say social media and how it changes, because that's where I get the most of my sales from. And every time the algorithms change and all those things change, and TikTok, and now I think I'm gonna have to get on there, and like learning new platforms for marketing on social media is a constant challenge.
Eddie?
Here in the U.S., it's really going to be labor, I think, for a long time. You know, we call work for a reason because it's work, and sometimes attracting people who want to work 12-hour shifts is difficult. But that's why we're going to continue to automate as much as we can. But there are great, somebody said it earlier, there are great employees in North Carolina, and they do come out of a rural community that knows what it's like to prime tobacco, and working in the factory is better than priming tobacco, apparently. I've never primed it, but that's going to be the challenge, I think.
I've primed tobacco. I would agree. Yes. Michael?
For us, it's a great problem, but it is growth. Because of our business plan, as well as the relationships that we are in the process or already engaged in forming right now. And with that growth, it is all too easy to leave our mantra and our beliefs, and everything we do is made in the USA. It's made in Burlington, and we want to stay that way. That is the American sportsman. All the marketing research told us 10 out of 11 American sportsmen will spend a little more money, keyword being a little more money, for made in the USA versus something from overseas, China being our biggest competitor. With growth and our supply chain, as we mentioned, it's very difficult not to venture off and get your supply chain from overseas. We're committed to it, and that's why will be a huge challenge for us.
Yeah, and for us, it is a people business on both sides of it, right? And so it is labor, and I am really excited about all the investment coming to the Triad area. I think it's fantastic. It's a great area, and it's been discovered, I think. But there are challenges about that, right? That we have to think through and make sure that we've got the right qualified folks in this area, looking to help support all of this great new work that's come. And then I'd refer back to the one I mentioned earlier, most specifically kind of these technical trades, which are at a massive shortage around the US, and we're no different here. And that really comes out of kind of combination of industry, government, and educational partnerships, I think, is how that can potentially be addressed, Lloyd.
So thank you very much, Kevin, Michael, Eddie, Janelle, for your perspectives, your insights. It's been a great conversation. How about a round of applause? Thank you. Mark, turn it back over to you.
Thank you very much, Lloyd, and thank you again to Kevin, Michael, Eddie, and Janelle for a very informative and at the same time inspiring conversation of 4 very different products or things that are made here in the Triad. So the common theme obviously of sustainability, but what I heard a lot that was really interesting was the commitment to the community. So in the case of Janelle, she's helping give some employees a second chance. Larger corporations like Thomas Built and Unify commitment to the Triad when frankly they're a global corporation and there's numerous areas that they could be doing business and they still are committed to the Triad. And then in the case of Mike, you spoke about your commitment to still staying in Burlington and building a made in the USA product. So thank you all for a great panel. At this point in time, I'd like to bring Joe Carroll back from Bank OZK. Many of you were able to give your business card to the basket, so Joe is going to draw 3 names for a gift basket, compliments of Bank OZK, and then Janelle was kind enough to bring a clutch, I believe, right, from Burn Bags. So we'll draw a 4th name here. Joe?
So Christmas comes earlier every year, so we're no different. So Christmas is early. So Kevin, how about you draw the first one? So the winner is Anisha. Is Anisha still here? Okay. You guys want to get the, yeah. Let's see, Michael, let you draw one. Okay, the second Bank OZK bag goes to Hayden Snow. Hayden still here? Good job, congratulations. Let's see, Eddie, we'll let you draw one. Okay. The final gift bag goes to Tracy Dellinger. Tracy? Good. Janelle, I'll let you draw yours. Oh. Hope I've got this right. Issa? ISSA? Okay, you get the burn bag. Congratulations. Thank you, Mark.
So again, I would like to personally thank Joe and everyone from Bank OZK as our title sponsor tonight, as well as our supporting sponsors, Gilliam Bell Moser, Guilford Technical Community College, Superior Mechanical, Workforce Unlimited. Thank you to the Millennium Center and Greg and your team here for hosting us tonight, as well as appreciation to Brand Connect for providing tonight's signage and programs. Thank you as well to our business package sponsor and our table sponsors whose logos you can currently see on the screen. Please give one final round of applause for our panelists and Lloyd for moderating a great informative discussion. Finally, I hope you will all read on December 1st our print edition of the Triad Business Journal, where we will recapture today's highlights from the conversation. Thank you for joining us. And at this point in time, please stick around for plenty of drinks and beverage and continue the networking time. And I believe our panelists will also stick around if anybody has additional questions that we weren't able to get to. So thank you again for joining us, and please enjoy the rest of the Everybody, just one last thing. The full bar is open in the back of the room, and then the food is over here to my right.